make Michigan shine. You know, tasting Michigan apples and this and that. And then we've got these spectacular felted ornaments of like Christmas pickles that are all made with Michigan wool. How would you not want that?
I did not know.
Yeah.
Because I definitely want it.
Yeah, exactly.
Hello, my name is Ria Wincaller, and I am the producer and cider MC of this weekly podcast, where we speak with makers, cider enthusiasts, and folks within the cider trade from around the world.
Hip, hip, hooray!
Bringing us into this here episode number 402 of Cider Chat. That means that there's 402 episodes, by the way. That's what all the numbers signify, and they are how I categorize the podcast episodes, and that means we're also in Season 9 of Cider Chat.
Hooray!
You heard from Molly Stepanski of Presque Farm Cider. Now, if you saw the name of this cidery out there in the world, you might want to pronounce it as Presque Farm Cider, but for the locals, it is Presque, and we're going to do our best in following their suit. She and her husband, Dion, are the founders of Presque Farm Cider, and they are going to be telling us all about their backstory, their journey to cider, and their magnificent ciders. Now, I don't say that lightly, and in fact, I even titled this episode, number 402, Michigan's Simply Spectacular PIF Cider. And PIF stands for Presque Farm Cider. I met Dion back in 2022. He was on a panel discussion about terroir, and I tasted the Kingston Black cider that he made. Now, Kingston Black, if you're not familiar with it, the Kingston Black is a red apple. It's kind of on the small side, so don't expect it to be like a big bulbous apple. And it's also a dark red. It originated from the United Kingdom, and it is a bitter, sharp apple. And cider makers really love this apple for fermenting because it adds that tannic structure, has nice acidity and sugar. And if you taste a Kingston Black from different regions of the world, you're going to often find like some similarities, but also because of the terroir, it's going to really differ. And what I taste from, well, Dion is a cider maker. It's just incredible. It's an absolutely delicious cider. And I would say, and you'll hear it too, that Kingston Black is really a beloved cider at their farm cidery. And it is one that they really know how to showcase. But they also have a whole bunch of other ciders too. And you'll be hearing about that as we go along. And I can't wait for us to get into this conversation. But first, we have a wee bit of news from out and about in Ciderville.
It is time once again for the New York International Cider Competition. This year is the 6th annual NYI Cider Competition, and it will be held the first week of April 2024. Top trade buyers, including importers, distributors, retailers, and craft beer bar owners, will be judging the ciders in a blind taste test by its category and the current price of the cider submitted. Ciders are judged by top trade buyers in the industry, as if they were buying for their own business. As a result, cider brands get insider info on how their ciders rate for retail shelves in terms of style, price point, and taste.
Your ciders do not have to be sold in New York or the United States. The New York International Cider Competition is open to all commercially produced ciders from around the world. Winners of this cider competition receive a 2-inch physical medal, a digital image of their medal, and a numerical score.
For more info and registration, go to nyicidercompetition.com and sign up today.
The New York International Cider Competition is a proud sponsor of Cider Chat. Submit your cider today. Go to nyicidercompetition.com, that's nyicidercompetition.com, and help keep cider going up.
In the last episode of Cider Chat, number 401, we featured a conversation with Chef Brian Duffy. He was sent 4 different ciders from the U.S., a sweet, some semi-dries, and a dry, and gave us a whole bunch of ideas on both cooking and pairing with these ciders. You will get hungry and thirsty for cider. I guarantee it. After listening to Chef Brian Duffy, oh my goodness, he really delivers. In addition, he also throws out a whole bunch of tips for anyone who is in the restaurant business or has a tasting room serving food. You should definitely check it out. I also mentioned the French Cider Tour, which is going out this coming September to Paris, Normandy, and Brittany. And I'm really excited because there is an update for this cider, and that is that I have added on another maker dinner. So that means that there is another celebrated cider maker, and we're going to have a dinner with this particular maker. So let me first fill you in. The first maker dinner that was already laid out is with Agathe Lettier, and she is a wonderful cider maker and Calvados producer. The other cider dinner that we have is with Eric Bordelais, also a wonderful cider maker, and he also is known for his poire, which is Perry. And we had this other cider dinner night, and, I saw this opening, and I thought, you know what, let me see if we could do this. And guess what? We can. On this other cider dinner that we're going to have it, our special guest is going to be Etienne Dupont of Domaine Dupont. If you don't know Domaine Dupont, I'd be really surprised, especially if you love cider. But don't feel bad about it. I mean, just go out to your store because it is one of the most accessible ciders, I would say, out there in the world. You could find it in Japan. You could find it all over the U.S. I go into my Whole Foods around here, and there it is. They really know how to distribute, and this family has been involved in cider making for a long time. I have a number of different episodes. If you just put in Domaine Dupont Cider Chat, they will come up. Find out more about this tour by going to the ciderchat.com website. You'll see the Totally Cider Tour tab. There'll be links to the reservations, and there's only limited seating left. This is the early bird price right now. In April, the cost of this tour does increase. If you're sitting on the fence, I would really recommend that you jump off and take action now. It's kind of like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see some of the most celebrated cider makers at this level. It's going to be magnificent.
Walking through the orchards.
It's time now to grab a glass and enjoy this chat with Molly and Dion Stepanski of Presque, a farm cidery based in Alpena, Michigan.
We're in the northeast tip kind of the lower peninsula, real close to Lake Huron.
Molly did the classic thing of putting out her hand. We kind of make a little mitt there. So everybody out there in Ciderville, put your hand up in front of your face right now with your thumb sticking out.
Yep, your right one.
Your right one, your right hand. Okay.
So we're looking at the palm. Go ahead and move over to your pointer, your first finger, and you're like probably just above that last fold or crease.
First part of your digit.
Yeah, about that far out.
Michigan's a big state, a big apple-producing state, lots of cider makers. Let's talk a little bit of the backstory of your farm and your journey to cider.
We had our son now 11 years ago, but as soon as we had our son in New Orleans, I wanted to reconnect and get closer to family. I have a family farm that I didn't grow up on, but it's been in the family, I believe, fifth generation. It was my great-grandfather's cattle farm, but I grew up in the small town of Alpena, which is kind of the small town in the area. My grandmother and great-grandmother lived out there while I was growing up, and it wasn't a working farm anymore. My father kind of took that over from them when I was in middle school or so and started just kind of a hobby farm, became a place we spent lots of time. He started raising some animals just kind of for fun. And then
that escalated and became a
he had a little petting zoo for a while where like kids in the area would
crazy amount of different species.
Oh, really?
School kids would come out to see animals and stuff. My parents actually moved out to the farms, and that would have been in '99, and lived there until we moved home then. in 2014. We were moving back to actually start farming vegetables. We were kind of had a couple friends that started a market farm. We were looking to slow down, raise our son in a nice, quiet place, in a healthy way. Started an organic vegetable farm that was kind of a full-on mixed production organic vegetable farm, very small scale, couple acres, all hand, very kind of typical of like the small farm movement that's going on. That slowly kind of consolidated more into greenhouse growing because it's northern Michigan,
northern lower,
and we get lots of snow, super cold. Essentially, we started the farm that's focused into more of a lettuce and greens production now. Much smaller than it was. It's just Molly and I. We don't have any employees on the farm. We started kind of looking for more value-added ideas. Kind of around that same time, started making cider on our own just for fun.
Had you ever fermented anything at that point, or?
Yeah. So my brother's big in the brewing industry. Was kind of around brewing. We started making some cider, and that kind of leads into talking more about apples. We started planting some trees. We have just a small 1 acre orchard that's pretty high density. It's not full-on trellised orchard, but it's pretty high density, all fenced in and nice. It's not producing much yet. But when we first started making the cider for ourselves, just as home cider makers, we were foraging a lot of fruit. And then one of our good friends, his brother-in-law, owns a big orchard in the TraverseCity area. So that's like straight across the state from us where like big apple region is. And lots of cherries, lots of apples. And so we would start going over there, and we kind of the group of friends, we started just making more and more cider as groups of friends do. And having kind of a one grinding and pressing party once a year, maybe some golden russets, but mostly dessert eating apples, Ida Reds, some spies. Then we would kind of forage a lot of apples because there are enormous amounts of beautiful, beautiful wild orchards, like full wild orchards where it's,
everywhere.
Several acres of trees.
They're spectacular.
So I got really into that for a little while, but it's super hard work. And it's like absurd.
A little unsustainable in many ways.
So some of those apples were beautiful, and as a small, as just making bottles for ourselves, some of those small batches were phenomenal in their complexity. But that, I guess, leads us into the cidery. Original plan was to sell only at farmers markets because we were already at farmers markets all the time. So that was the plan. 2020, we did our first commercial pressing. And as soon as we were going for commercial pressing, we immediately sought out some other farms in the TraverseCity area because we wanted to go straight for bittersweet and bitter sharp apples. We wanted to do English Style Cider. We were already mostly doing wild spontaneous fermentations and wanted to kind of go down that path. So we have to thank the beautiful community of cider makers that have been so helpful. It's exactly how we learned how to farm, too, because we moved to Michigan, didn't know how to farm. So our main apple grower that we work with, what is for us a large amount of Kingston Blacks and bittersweets, that was Dan Young from Tandem who turned me on to that farmer, who he just kind of appreciated what we were trying to do and was like, passed on that connection to us. So,
nice.
So it's really been, we were able to connect with those farms by other cideries and cider makers being generous with their information. Still super small, don't plan to get any bigger.
And what are your two roles?
I am sales and marketing. I'm also grunt labor, delivery person, and then basically the Dutch boy that puts his thumb in the hole wherever it needs to be placed. Yeah. That's kind of my role. Yeah. And then Dion he's totally in charge of production, but we also are always sharing, going back and forth with what we're doing with each other. So we both have say-so in both realms.
Can I ask you how it is as, working with your spouse, and you got any tips there on making that work? Or a certain way that you work on that?
I do have some honest tips that's really, really important because it has to do with our farm as well. Like our farm, we do everything together. It's like our home is the farm. Our son's there. We're raising him together. the tap room, which is another business, is like, this whole other business. So there's kind of like 3 businesses going on. There's like cider production, which is like a whole business in its own. There's running the tap room. And then there's the farm that's still going. And it's a lot. And so we've really consciously been always trying to keep tabs on each other and check in. And even more recently, we're specifically trying to schedule out time and determine times that are off limits for work. So I'm super passionate about farming and about cider, and so I can easily, because it's one of my favorite things too. So I easily can go into just like, work is done, but now all evening all I do is sit and talk about cider is going to be a problem. And so recognizing that, and we're trying to take steps. It's a lot harder. Like the holidays, it gets crazy, so our schedules get all wonky. But it really is
pure madness.
It is important that we need to like have times of days where it's just like it's off limits. We have weekly meetings, for tap room, weekly meetings for production stuff. If we're blending and tasting, that we don't want to happen until the evening because now we're drinking, and so we'll tend to like want to blend and taste like 4, 5 in the evening. But then when we're done, we're really trying to stop because it is important and it's hard. It's a hard line to travel.
Yeah.
Setting up the tap room has really helped to kind of clarify our roles. It's actually been maybe good in that regard because. Our roles have gotten a little bit more because there's more work to do, that we have to be more efficient at like who's doing what where. But from production side, it's for the most part all me. But like finishing aspects of production and our finished products are 100% a part of like both of our palates. Typically, I'm doing the initial bringing forward a bunch of ideas, and then we kind of together are blending. To come up with finished approaches of what's actually going to end up in a bottle.
Yeah. Let's talk about that process of cider making for you. And I wanted to first go into like the yeast profile, and the native yeast or ambient yeast, or what do you call it? Because I'm always kind of curious about.
So we've went back and forth from wild to native. I think right now we're sticking with wild as type of yeast. Because I think more people relate to that than native, at least where we are.
But it's also nice to be able to develop our very own flavor, terroir coming through.
All of our home cider making, we had shifted over the few years into basically just spontaneously fermenting everything. But as soon as our 2020 first year of commercial pressing, as soon as we had way more cider than we've ever had before, and now it was a business model. We kind of hedged our bets that first year of pitched yeast in half, the rest go wild. Then 2021 kind of started our approach to spontaneous fermentation as letting things happen and only pitching if there's problems, and that kind of continues to be our approach. And so the last 2022 and 2023, I haven't pitched yeast in anything other than some cider piquettes because they're a little, we can talk about those too, but they're a little, or ciderkins. So if we're having trouble or it seems like there's going to be a problem, I'm not opposed to pitching yeast. Because there's definitely a time and place for it.
Yeah, kind of like the farmer's way, right?
Yep.
You got to make it happen.
Yep.
No matter what. What about sulfites?
When needed, again, when if there's like a problem or something arising, we really are striving for that like English style, low acid, lots of bittersweet fruit. Most everything's usually going through ML.
Malolactic fermentation.
Yeah.
Part of my real interest in speaking to you, other than getting your story, is I've tasted your cider. It was in Richmond the first time, and it really blew me out of the water. I was like, wow, like you are like hitting this like spot on. Like, what was that panel discussion? What was that one?
So that was, I think that
Michigan
was
terroir.
Yeah, terroir.
Right, terroir. Yeah. And I was like, God, I am like tasting it right here. I like ML. I like the softness it does, the fuller mouth. Some people really avoid it.
So what was your decision going forward with that?
My ideas about it all have changed over time as well. So now I think that it has more of a place in with bittersweet and bitter sharp fruit than it does with some other fruit. So, if it was just a blend of like dessert fruit, I am not a super big fan of letting ML happen to that. You could still wild ferment, but then I would probably try controlling more with sulfite. But the bittersweet character really like opens up and blossoms into those earthy and leathery and smoky phenolics when they're playing with the ML. So to get those to happen, you have to let that happen. Or as an example, our 2022 Kingston Black was super bright, super intense acid, pretty grippy tannin too. Right out of the gate, fermentation finished and was super, super clean. And it was so different than our previous 2020 Kingston that, it fermented in our cellar for like 9 months or something like that before it finally finished. So it really slowed down. And went through like that whole process, but we wanted to bottle something that was different, and I was kind of hoping it would, develop in bottle. So we packaged it right away, so we would have a different type of cider, and it's a beautiful cider, really elegant and bright acid, way more elegant than kind of like the earthiness and the leatheriness of the mallow. But to me, I think it's a little. Out of my preferences, I don't want to, talk trash about one of my own ciders because it's a beautiful cider.
Some people will like it, though.
But it's not my style, and I think you miss that opportunity for especially an apple like Kingston Black that plays so well with mallow because there's good acid there to like protect it. 2021, we really upgraded and like expanded our barrel program from initially I think we had like 7 or 8 barrels for our first year in 2020, and then by 2021 we had pushed it up to about 36 barrels. So what the problem is that it ended up
every type imaginable.
Yeah, the problem it ended up being too large of a portion to our whole the total amount of cider. So we were pulling from those barrels, and I wanted to keep the barrels in production. I didn't want to just fill them and store them, with solution to save the space. And so we ended up buying other juice to just like hold the place until we're pressing again in the fall. And all that said, we're kind of downsizing our barrel approach now. I think to have a very specific approach to what barrels, it's still probably, we'll still probably have 15 barrels or something like that. But to be able to integrate that more and create a more diverse profile of ciders too. So I've gotten really excited about what can happen, with wild fermentations in stainless, minus the barrel character. And so when we had so much of our bulk was in barrels, everything ends up being barreled, which, it's not, 2021, we have some amazing ciders, but it's all very heavy barrel influence. So trying to decrease that amount so that we can always have enough of a base in bulk to refill those barrels, but we can have the palate, it's expanding our color palette almost to have more in tanks so we can pick and choose when we want barrel character to come in. Because my palate also was getting so used to barrel character that I wasn't tasting it in our cider until I would come places like CiderCon or Glintcap, and we'd do like a panel tasting of a bunch of spits or something like that together with other people. And I would be like, I didn't know that our Calvados, barrel-aged spits was so barrely. I didn't, I wasn't perceiving it.
Yeah.
And then next to those other ciders, we're like getting all these beautiful notes of vanilla and oak that are gorgeous, but I just wasn't perceiving it. And so the more we have a mix of ciders in our portfolio, it keeps my palate fresh too, to be able to distinguish those.
Yeah.
Because we drink a lot, we drink our most of the time it's our cider that we're drinking on a daily basis, and
Sure.
our palates get just used to.
You can't get fatigued in a way. Yeah.
Used to what we're always used to. So
Similar to farming, so we are brand new to, both farming and cider making. We don't have generational farmers in our family to learn from. You quickly learn what your customers want and do not want. Our first year out of the gate farming, I think we had probably 20 different varieties of all different kinds of things. They were beautiful, spectacular, but we only sold like your very basics, the carrots, this and that. And so one of the things that's been really successful for us, I think, is that because we're so small, we can make those shifts fairly easily. Like we were able to, procure canning. And so
Fantastic.
and especially with COVID and all that went down with that, I think that's been incredibly helpful.
Yep. Then back to barrels. So now we do a mix of fermentation in barrels. So sometimes it's juice straight into barrel on heavy lees for a year, and we'll batonnage.
Okay, cool.
Sometimes it's kind of experimenting a little bit more with how we're moving and the logistics of moving cider out of barrels so that we can have a clean, a freshly washed barrel that we're putting in a cider that is almost totally settled out and clear already, even though we didn't filter. And so the difference of what happens when you age that very
barrel.
Clarified, self-clarified cider. But having those mixes, because again, then now you have this huge palette to work with. It could be the same cider blend that's a clarified from the same pressing versus then one that is sitting on lees, and the differences that are happening with that. So then when we bottle or are blending, we've got a barrel has that batonnage character, getting really creamy right next to the same blend that's not. So just trying to build complexity.
You're doing blends and single varietals, right? We know that,
Yep.
right? The Kingston Black is a single varietal.
Yep.
What other single varietals do you do?
So we typically will have a golden russet most of the time. We've done many Spitzenberg single varietals. We have done. I'm trying to think if we did a Spy. I don't think so.
Okay.
So KB, Spitz, and Golden Russet, I think are only. We attempted a brown snout, and we can get into the blending of our farmhouse when we start tasting. But we had a brown snout planned, but then it just it's like the aha light bulb singing symphony goes off when we were testing or doing some blending and bench trials, where we had to put it into the farmhouse because it just made it sing, so it didn't get to stay as single varietal. But these are all super, super small batch too. So for scale size, our largest batch is only ever 1,000 liters. That's our biggest tank, and we typically want everything to be blended. We're not trying to blend one tank and then recreate that and have it under the same label. So so our largest batches are 1,000 liters, and that's
manageable
a batch.
For your whole business plan there.
And barrel wise, if it's all barrels, it's going to be like 5 barrels. Usually fits the bill. But like our single varietal golden russet from 2022, as an example, was literally one individual barrel. It's one thing to make cider on a small scale, and we still are tiny, but it's another thing after a few years of managing a larger amount of cider. I'm into some single varietals, but I really am gearing more towards blending. And it really is all about these.
You're more able to round things out and add things that you want. It's the same as with cooking,
Sure.
You can taste if something is too sweet, you add
what
sour.
What does it need?
What does it need vinegar? Does it need fat? Does it need acid, salt?
Yeah.
So, and it's, that's what I liken it to every time we sit down to do blending is, okay, what do we need to add to this? What's missing?
Yeah, fascinating.
And so I don't think out of the gate we'll do a single varietal just because, and that, like we were before, we would just, we were like, all right, we're going to do single varietal. And this is what it is this year. Even our 2022 Golden Russet wasn't doing what I wanted to do. Again, did something totally different than our previous year, which was like botanaged for a year in Calvados barrels and bottled still, and is just this beautiful, creamy, really wine-like, delicious thing. The 2022 version didn't really turn out like that. And I think the Golden Russet might have a better place not as a single varietal. So this year we didn't. So I had a limited
And that's also
amount.
terroir too, you know.
Right.
Your Golden Russet, maybe you want to blend it, versus Ohio.
Right.
They want to keep it single. Yeah,
every
whatever.
year's batch is going to be different. We're just working
Keeps
with
it
what we
interesting.
are able to get.
Well, let's talk a little bit about apples here. What's your favorite to grow? Do you have any favorites?
So growing wise, we're still just
Infancy.
babying a young orchard.
I was kind of curious about that. Yeah.
Which is so it's been a certified organic orchard because we're a certified organic vegetable operation. But I'm also actually thinking, since the cidery has become bigger than the farm operation, and it's now demanding more of our time, and the trees, most of them have been in the ground for edging up towards 5 years. Grafted ourselves from an initial 40 trees of various varieties as kind of our experimental. So it's been like a learning process too. We've been grafting every year, so there are some pockets of it that the grafts didn't take, and we're redoing, learning the whole process.
Well, maybe this
So
is a good question to ask you, in the 5 year down the line.
Yep.
What's your favorite apple to grow?
Yep.
Why don't we come back to that
Yep.
question?
But I can talk about my favorite, our favorite. We definitely have favorite apples to work with.
Well, that's one I want to know. Favorite one to ferment.
So my favorite apple to work with, and it may sound cliche, but I think it is absolute amazing single varietal and the most beautiful blending apple. And Kingston Black is my favorite apple. It is gorgeous and adds and can bring so much to a blend, even at 25%. So a lot of our ciders have a small portion of Kingston Black. It's just so gorgeous in blends too.
Yeah.
It's notorious for its single varietal, but it does amazing things to ciders and blends as well. So
I love that. I mean, it is kind of becoming. I
probably
kind
my
of think of you
favorite.
guys, and I do think of Kingston Black. So yeah, it makes sense, and nothing wrong with that. It's nice to have your little niche kind of specialty, and can kind of play with that, let it dance. Yeah.
Yep.
In my mind, Kingston Black and Golden Russet are kind of always duking it out as far as my favorite apple. And I love the tropicalness of the Golden Russet.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. We use a lot of Balmers too. So Balmers Norman is a very exciting apple for me, and it's got very distinct and can be it can be a little stinky to people even when it's not doing anything wrong. It's just because it's got this earthy round, very soft round edges to it or something. But I really like that apple.
Is there any one apple that's the most challenging?
Spitzenberg doesn't play well with others.
Okay.
For us.
Yeah.
he's an only child.
An only child? Okay. Doesn't want to hang out with the family. Okay. All right.
So bourbon barrel cider, bourbon barrel focused cider is a single varietal Spitzenberg right now, at least, and and it was in barrels for 2 years, and it's still bright.
It's a hooligan,
Yeah, it is.
as they say.
It is a big cider. It's a 12.5%.
Wow.
But yeah, it just doesn't play well, especially young. It doesn't want to be in blends.
Who are the cider fans?
I'm always trying to figure out, how do we get people in there to want to be together? And it seems to be working. There have been people that have come from all over Michigan and other states too, who come in that are either from Alpena or married and came back to it or something of that nature, who literally come up and take me aside and shake my hand and say thank you so much for creating this place.
Yeah, right on.
So that's a big part of what we do.
It's a comfortable space with couches, and it's just like it's a very beautiful.
There's art everywhere.
Yeah,
There's plants.
go online, go to PIF.com and take a look for it.
Yeah.
And look for the upcoming events.
Indeed, yeah.
Yes.
Our calendar is pretty chock full. We also do a book club. We have just all kinds of stuff.
Fantastic.
Who our customers are, we're trying to make it like our whole local community. Our local cider club is a once a month meeting and tasting where we usually are tasting new releases, and it's usually a group of 20 to 30 people,
It's grown, though.
and we all get together and we all taste at the same time, and we really get in the weeds. So it is like I talk about all the details of it. So the people who have now been participating in it, even though we haven't been open, just over a year or so, we're building that core group of people who may not have known about cider now, but now
Educated
they know
them.
what ML is because I've talked to them about it over and over again. They're learning
That's
about
great.
cider,
Yes.
and then they kind of talk to their friends. So it can be as nerdy as that. And if you come in and I'm there, like I'm always like, if
Beware
we
the
have
cider geek.
12 drafts and like all our other bottles, I am always, sharing, trying to expose people to new things, but it also is about pulling everyone into the community. So our flight system now has been a lot easier to navigate where, it's just pick anything. And so it's really inviting we're trying to make it more inviting to even someone who doesn't know anything about cider and doesn't really want to sit and listen to me be dorky and tell them all this stupid stuff about cider.
It's not stupid, but you're geeking out on it.
Everybody's
Not
different.
stupid, yeah.
But it also harkens back to about asking people, what do you like, and trying to relate to them with what they're bringing to us. If they walk through that door, they're curious enough that they're going to try a cider.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that they're trying the cider, that they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, connect.
Wow,
with,
I do like cider. Okay. Yeah, and when we started, we're a little too purist and only had like pretty much bone dry everything. And so now it's also just a piece of that is, there's so many people that think they hate cider because they've only had sweet cider, or they think they don't like cider because they've only had dry cider.
Yeah.
And so just
I think
finding that way.
we
that
truly
kind
do
of goes
have-
across the board for
Our study-
everybody.
We do
definitely
truly have a cider for everyone. We have everything from like the smokiest, leathery, phenolic English style cider to, a fruity, vanilla blush, barrel aged vanilla blush to like a cherry.
Well, I have to say, I'm getting thirsty.
Okay.
So I think we've hit this time here.
Our 2022 farmhouse. If there is a cider that kind of encompasses what our style is and what we want cider to be, it would be this cider. It was the first cider where Molly and I were blending for the first time. Table full of glasses from all our barrels and all our tanks, and we're a little overwhelmed with like, okay, so now what are we going to do? How are we going to blend? Just kept working at it, kind of blind tasting. So we were blind blending at that point. This blend, as soon as it hit the glass, both of Molly and I just like looked at each other, and it was really like singing, and it does sing.
Cheers.
Cheers.
To your health.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, what kind of color would you say that is? How'd you describe that?
Golden amber.
Golden
getting
amber.
in. Yep.
It's not a still. It's
No, so it's forced carbonated.
It's forced carbonation.
Yep.
Okay, because
Yep.
we did get a pop.
Yep, we do some pet nats, but most everything is going to be forced carbonated, and that's kind of a cider making choice because I do feel like we can capture what we want in the bottle without having another fermentation that's going to happen in the bottle that could change all that. So I think there's a place for it, but we really appreciate it.
So let's talk about the taste profile.
Yep.
How would you explain the taste of this? Getting some nice tannins there.
Yep.
A nice
right
little
off the bat.
aroma coming up.
Yeah, it's got a big bouquet on the
Yeah.
nose, very juicy. It's only about 35% Kingston, but it really
It
comes
shines.
through with that like orange
Sure
rind,
does,
candied
yeah.
orange.
Nice astringency to it. Phenolics. Yeah.
And the artwork on the bottle is by our son, who's 11.
Are you kidding me? It's gorgeous.
Yep.
8.2% alcohol by volume. So this is being poured from a 750 ml bottle. It's a green bottle, and the label that Molly's describing is like a watercolor. They have the PIF here. There's little houses, which is probably their barn.
Three-dimensional map. So
I see.
roads,
Okay, cool.
But also,
right.
it's
super cool.
Our 9-year-old, he was 9, I think, at the time.
Oh, yeah.
9
Yeah,
I mean,
was already.
when he did
Wow.
Gracious me.
that.
Yeah.
So it's
But yeah,
fun.
and that's also on our. We just did sort of a different color, same label on our can of Farmhouse,
the Farmhouse
Fresh.
Fresh, which is a clean
Basi-
version.
yeah, it's a clean
Same
version.
apple blend.
And so it's the same label as that, but with green as the background.
Now, I want to describe a little bit of the cider.
Yeah.
And what I'm experiencing. And obviously, we're at a big cider conference, so we've had a lot of cider. And at this stage in the game, I've been, on the road for 7 days of drinking cider every day. And what I'm looking for is something I can relax into here. It's just really well balanced, native yeast.
Yep.
So I'm like sitting with you right now on your property.
Yeah.
I'm getting a sense of your house yeast. A bit, like I get that sense here coming out of this bottle. What I would expect to. I mean, I haven't drank enough of your ciders to know that, so maybe that's not true at all. But there's a certain quality of that I think comes through. It's feeling.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, I think it's very approachable. This is the first cider I would recommend people to try, and even though it has like this good tannin character in this like English style to it, with some phenolics, I think it's still approachable. And a lot of people who aren't familiar with cider as a first intro to cider,
perfect.
There's some perceived sweetness,
Right, because you've gone dry, but there's lots of fruit singing through. Yeah,
Ghost notes of sugar.
Yeah,
really lovely.
yeah. So it's a cider we're always very proud of. Really, it's about Kingston Black as being like a quarter to 35%. Balmers and Brown Snout, which are about 50% bittersweets in there then, and then this 20 to 25% Spy to even brighten up the Kingston acid.
I love how you balanced it for I see it as every person's palate right here, but maybe that's just me because I just want everybody to have this. Somebody who wants really sweet, that they're going to get a little bit. I could see a newbie going, this is surprising me. I like this. This is really approachable and not, 8.2% is a high side. It's like an imperial style in some ways. At that level. But still much lower than wine.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Oh,
still
absolutely.
much lower. Yeah.
One of the things that we're doing uniquely is hitting this heavy phenolic approach. So this is a Kingston Black Balmers blend,
look
50-50.
at that. Yeah, forced carbonation again, but it's cranking.
This one we did do a pet nat version of, but
beautiful.
This is just forced carbonated.
That label, oh my gosh, stunning.
This one was only in a stainless tank, so it didn't touch barrel. And I say that because there's we'll let you see what you smell.
Well, it's interesting. In the bottle, the color's a little bit different than when it comes to glass.
It's influenced by the label.
By the label, which just for folks to know, it's like a watercolor. I label, the artwork, and it's like a fiery, one of those red skies at night kind of color with that deep red. In the bottle, it looks kind of orangey a tinge.
Yep.
But here, we're getting more of the golden,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nice yellow amber.
Yep. Wild ferment in stainless, 50-50 blend, and this tank just out of the, right off the bat, before fermentation was barely moving, started pushing off all these phenolic, leathery, smoky elements that are very
I'm getting the smokiness right at the finish. You're not at the front, you're getting a little brightness there, the acid, and then it creeps up and it just coats your entire mouth.
Yeah.
I want to just have some food, give me some cheese. I want to go have some barbecue chicken. Bring me out to a little pig roast. I don't care. I'm just okay, give me the bottle. Let me hide in the corner.
I'm in for the pig roast.
It's chewier, there's grippier, chewier tannins in this than the farmhouse.
I love how you're showcasing the Kingston.
It does seem to play really well with Balmers. That's been something that exists over and over again when we're blending. We come back and they're always playing together. So it's
they're like friends, cousins, as opposed to Spitzenberg, which is an only child.
Wow, it's stunning. I love how the label kind of messes with your head a little bit, make it look like one color.
Yeah,
it leads you in.
I don't know whether we'd do that again because it wasn't on purpose.
It wasn't on purpose, but it kind of,
And we've actually moved more towards green bottles now. I do like clear bottles because you can see it, but access to glass is just another thing that's been strange.
Yeah.
So this is going to be,
exquisite.
A gorgeous example of
exquisite.
English.
What year is this?
So that would have been 2022 pressing.
2022, yeah. Damn, well done. Well done.
Let's shift gears away from phenolics, which, English phenolics, again, are forte, so that's what we started with, because that's what I love. If I'm going to drink cider, personally, Farmhouse is my everyday cider when I'm wanting something super crippy.
Okay.
I move on to the Kingston, but this is our single varietal Spitzenberg 2021, aged for 2 years.
Exciting.
Before it was bottled. It was bottled at about 2 years old. So it was bottled not too long ago, but it's about 12.5% is what it finished at. So we had our initial gravity was about 10%, which is pretty typical for our Spitzenbergs. But sitting in barrels for 2 years in the bourbon barrels.
12%. So I'm having the feeling it's going to be smooth as a baby's behind, though, at 12%.
But just a picture of our ciders that are beyond our glass is filled with phenolics from that. So there's big oaky bourbon notes.
Yeah.
So it's about the most bourbony.
Very bourbony. How long was it in the bourbon barrel? 2 years.
2 years,
right?
but it's really soaked it in a way that the bourbon's not overwhelming to me. Now, I'll confess I do like bourbon, but I notice it's dispersed it into it. It's not like moving bourbon forward and you're like, little hot. You don't have that at all. No. Well balanced.
And the Spitzenberg still sings through, too.
Totally, yeah. That's what I'm saying. It's ruling the bottle there.
For all the reasons why it doesn't play well with other people is why it's so delicious on its own.
The cool thing about cider versus wine, with grapes, is that you have a high ABV here at 12%, and normally if it was a grapevine, a grape product, a wine style, that would just kind of be a little bit warmer and higher. Here, it still feels really bright, and the 12% doesn't knock you out, make you feel overwhelmed. Yep. Super right on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well done.
It's a delicious example, and bourbon drinkers, I think, do really appreciate it too. Oftentimes in the craft beer world, a lot of the bourbon beers, bourbon barrel influenced beers, are really sweet, and they really play on that sweet vanilla. And this drinks a lot more like a real bourbon character.
Super.
And so bourbon drinkers actually really like this and are happy to have
finish is nice. It's kind of you get. It's not vanilla. It's the notes of the bourbon, but it's really subtle, the finish.
People come in and their drink that they tell me is bourbon, I go straight to this.
Hell yeah. And I bet they're happy little campers. You got to be kidding me.
Absolutely.
So what's this can here?
So these would be an example of the clean ciders that we're doing, the can. Okay. So everything in a can is going to be yeast pitch.
Golden Russet
Harrison blend.
Okay.
This is our pub style Balmer's, Norman, and Cox, and that's going to be so this is a semi-dry. This is going to be a semi-sweet, so back sweetened with French bittersweet concentrate. And then this is our Farmhouse. It's a dry, but it still does have about 1% residual sugar, back sweetened with the French concentrate, and it's the same exact blend of apples. So it's 35% Kingston, 25% Brown Snout, 25% Spy, and 15% Balmer's Norman. So it's a slight variation, but still those 4 apples, which I think are probably my favorite group of apples. Like it's
You're owning it. You're owning it. It's like you're like, yeah, I'm with
those
you.
Those are my 4 apples. If I could just have all those apples, just enormous amounts of those, and do all their various blends of those, I would. Since we're talking about how we've expanded our lineup and started working with Sean in this other new approach of like working with another cidery, which is something that I think small producers should also take from this conversation, is that it's been really amazing. And you don't have to get your own canning line, and you don't have to buy all your own equipment, and we should work more collaboratively, especially small producers, to like make use of the resources we have. This expands our lineup and truly is going to show you the breadth. Minus the fruitiness of like cherry, because we're not bringing any other fruit into this right now. But as far as like clean and dry to sweet, and still heavy bitter sweets, to like super phenolic Kingston Balmers that's like smoky, and to bourbony Spitzenberg, like it's a big breadth.
It's a big range.
Then this would be.
Do we want to taste this first before it?
Well,
just a little splash.
Okay, we're doing a little splash of the farmhouse. Called farmhouse, but that might kind of conjure up ideas like farm style barnyard, but that's not what this is at all.
Yep. So our approach to English cider style is to maintain.
The difference between this and what's in the bottle.
So different orchards.
At that. Look at
different
the clarity's like super.
So this is going to be yeast pitched. So this is 2023 harvest, yeast pitched, fermentation, fast and clean, controlled, filtered, and produced and canned. A more modern, canned approach, like most of more of the commercial cideries out there, connecting back to us by the same blend of apples and what happens when you do,
so different. This is a perfect cider to grab when I'm going out on the boat. I'd be so happy having this next to me, having a little ham sandwich or roast beef, whatever, and some potato chips because I'm living it that day. A little coleslaw to kind of spice it up, and then have some of this, and maybe some nice pickles. I would be probably. I might spontaneously combust at that moment.
Well, I was talking earlier today about something that I'd been thinking about, and I don't know where it came from. It's probably a southern thing, but a sweet potato biscuit with fried chicken, and then a spicy coleslaw, and then a blue cheese dressing too. Because oh my gosh, this would go perfect with that.
It would. Yeah, blue cheese dressing.
It would help.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see how the finish is different. Damn, that's like for the masses, who are like, that's really kind of introduction to some tannins and some bittersweet character, but it's still a very clean and filtered. 100%.
And we have huge, like you talking about being on the water. That's another giant influence for us canning, is because we want to stay local and we want to gain more local customers, not expand really beyond, and summers on Lake Huron, and we're just surrounded by small inland lakes. People, directly asked us to do something about our bottle problem because no one's taking a 750 onto a boat.
Except Rhea.
And us.
Well, it gets tough. It gets tough.
I'm careful with my glass on the boat, no doubt. But, I just mainly go out and float on the boat. Yeah. I'm not going around water skiing. So if you see me showing up, pulling my little skiff, my little 16-foot skiff, and, I might just park the trailer out there, sit in my boat on the trailer, and pretend I'm on the water, and, just start cracking the cans. That's all I need.
I do that when I paddleboard.
You just sit out there.
I sit on the paddleboard on the beach and drink the cider because I don't want to spill it either.
You are my people.
And then once I've finished it, then I go out. It's like a preparation ritual.
Yeah. That's it's really rock solid. Really well done.
Fun cider. And so big shout out to Sean too, because Sean Nimesto is essentially head cider maker for our can lines.
Yes.
Molly and I come together with the ideas. We we go back and forth and drive back and forth and taste while fermentation's happening, right when it's finished, decide on sweetness levels, but like he's kind of, holding the reins of that. And so finding him and being able to work with him has been awesome.
Yeah.
He's a big component of our whole can line.
Right.
And he's just really knowledgeable and super nice.
Yeah.
So that helps.
So big shout out to him for sure.
Our favorite ginger.
It's kind of baked apple a little bit, but not caramelized apple.
Yep.
Okay? Like if you had a piece of like apple pie, and it's like the best apple pie in your life, and you've had, you're getting some of that nice apple-y there.
Yeah.
It's a little cooked apple, not over top, not super, it's no spices here.
Yeah.
It's simple and spectacular.
Yeah.
Simple and spectacular is like holy cow, so, right?
Yeah, that's all we do. What else?
This is Golden Russet Harrison. It's 9%, and it's a semi-dry. And for, to get the Golden Russet and the Harrison to pop and stay clean and be this, like, really bright, what we're kind of expecting from clean versions of those apples, back sweetened with just cane sugar to get that to pop. So as opposed to the farmhouse in our pub style, we're not back sweetening with like bittersweet concentrate because we want the cane sugar to kind of get the popping of, to really make that Golden Russet and Harrison the tropical fruity character to pop a little bit more.
Did we do 1.5 residual on that, or do you remember?
Probably. It's pretty low.
It's pretty low.
It's technically a semi-dry. So with our
ABV on this one?
9%.
Back up.
Yes. Yep. So it's golden.
It is Friday. Is it Friday? I don't really know what day of the week it is.
It is. This is, in fact, a go sit in the corner by yourself and drink because it's. I really like this.
Have you been there before?
Obviously.
It's a big cider that's in a can, but could equally this could be served in a champagne flute.
Indeed.
As well.
So it's the color is quite light.
So
here.
It's very pale.
Pale. A little bit of like greenish hue there. I'm getting.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's always hard in a room, but yeah, totally a little greenish hue.
A straw, Golden Russet on the nose, straight out of the gate.
Different from everything I've tasted here now.
Yeah. Whole complete different experience.
A bit more acid, that we've been experiencing. Really bright cider.
And that's more of that like typical Michigan acid. So a lot of Michigan ciders are associated with this high acid, and we don't do any of that and can't do it really on our site because we're so wild with all our spontaneous fermentation. So this is exciting that we can add something so boldly acid driven.
People that come in and tell me that they really like Prosecco or champagne, they often, for whatever reason, gear towards this.
Go for that semi-dry. Yeah, and I like how you have it in big bold letters right there on the can, semi-dry. Yes. That helps people, doesn't it?
It does.
This is just outstanding. Yeah, I'm really impressed, and I love how you've kind of stretched it a bit. You have the 750 ml and these like 12-ounce cans, and so you're able to approach a customer base that is rather broad, right? And bring them along like with stepping stones to that Kingston Black and the more, we're going to call them like the super elite cider apples, that everybody wants to hang out with, but, it takes a while to get into that crowd. You don't really know how to hang out with them. It's like it's almost a little bit of initiation, right? On the palate,
Absolutely.
until you've had that, sometimes it's like an age change where all of a sudden you don't want to have sweet, and you're going more refined and, I'm so delighted to speak to you and hear your bigger story, and also to get a sense of how you're developing your brand. I imagine 5 years from now, what's the plan? What's the 5-year plan?
I think that the real plan is that we want to stay within, not growing so much more. But I just would prefer all that cider to be sold directly from us in our small town.
What is the population of the town?
It's like 20,000 or something.
I think it's more like 30.
in the summer.
That's a big town. I live in a town under 2,000. So you're saying
There's the boundaries of the town are because they're very large. There's no other city, and it's like 2 hours to get to any major highway.
Yeah.
Or interstate, I should say.
Yeah, yeah.
Aside from just using that space as a way to shift culture a little bit, is to really just make Michigan shine. Tasting Michigan apples and this and that, and then we've got these spectacular felted ornaments of like Christmas pickles that are all made with Michigan wool. How would you not want that? I've heard this probably more than anything else when people come in is, I love the vibe in here.
Oh, yeah.
And so I just want the vibe to keep going.
Yeah.
I want people to walk in and just look around and feel a little joy.
That's special. That's really special.
And then taste something amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I could feel that wherever you are, you carry that vibe. I know listeners out there are saying, this is what I need to hear. So thank you so much for being part of this.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. We're big fans.
Yeah, such a huge resource of endless episodes. So it's been...
I mean, you were part of our process, just like when we came in and learned from other farmers when we were coming into cider, you were a pretty big encyclopedia for us.
Yay.
So thank you.
Yay, my pleasure.
Yeah.
Not only was that a lovely chat, and I adore their ciders, and of course them too, but we love hearing how Cider Chat is such a reference point for so many future cider makers and current makers today. Being called an encyclopedia is pretty cool. Check out the show notes for this here episode and contact info for Presque Farm Cider at ciderchat.com, episode 402. And if this here podcast is worth your listen and you get value, please do consider becoming a patron today or hitting the donate button at ciderchat.com. This podcast is listener supported. And with that, I leave you here. This is Ria Windcaller signing off for now. Looking forward to seeing you in Ciderville.
We like cider, we like ponds, we love orchards and having fun. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes there is. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes there is. There is a reason why we drink it like this. Oh yes there is a reason. We like walking through the orchards, dancing in the streets, smelling all the blossoms, kicking up our feet. We like cider, we like ponds, we like orchards, having some fun. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes there is. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes there is. There is a reason why we drink it like this. Oh yes there is. There is a reason. We like walking through the orchards, dancing in the streets, smelling all the blossoms, kicking up our feet. Oh yeah. We like cider. Oh yes we do. We like ponds. Oh yes we do. We love orchards, having some fun. There is a reason why we do it like this. Ba-da-da-dum. There is a reason why we do it like this. Ba-da-da-dum. There is a reason why we drink it like this. Ba-da-da-dum. Ba-da-da-dum. We like walking down the orchards, dancing in the streets, smelling all the blossoms, kicking up our feet. Oh yeah. We like cider. Ba-da-da-dum. We like ponds. Oh yes we do. We like orchards, having some fun. Yeehaw!